Oh, I've had the idea for probably 3 or 4 years now. It's just been sitting there in the back of my brain, a bit dormant, until I went on holidays at Christmas time up the Gold Coast and saw all the cars cooking in the sun up there and said it's about time I did something about it.
What Alan Parsons came up with was a portable garage, not just a car cover but an inexpensive and easy-to-erect shelter. These roll-on tracks act like tent pegs. The shelter won't go anywhere unless the car does. Poles are then put into place and a nylon covering attached. It takes around 3 minutes to put up and anyone can do it. In fact, Alan sees many uses for his garage.
I think the biggest one would have to be car yards, where they have their cars out in the sun all day, and of course the effect of hail that damages them, and the insurance claims and so forth. And other than that, just people who go to work and park their cars in car parks.
Alan has lodged a patent for his design and will begin marketing the shelter immediately. He believes the garage will cost around $200 to buy. If you think it's easy to put up, wait till you see it coming down.
Keith Stewart turned up for work at the service's Broadmeadow base yesterday, only to be told by a representative of SLSA Helicopters that he was sacked. The reasons for the pilot's dismissal remain unclear, and the newly appointed chairman of the Hunter Service Board, Cliff Marsh, refuses to explain, even though the board endorsed the sacking.
That is a matter between employer and employee, and that's where the matter will stop.
But that's not where the issue has stopped. The ambulance union has spoken out in support of Mr Stewart, saying he's an excellent pilot.
We have real concerns that if he's replaced, and we believe he should be reinstated, that if he's replaced, who's he going to be replaced with?
And apparently the outrage over the sacking does not end with the ambulance union. It's believed the service's volunteer crewmen want Mr Stewart reinstated by next weekend, otherwise they'll consider resigning. The Crown Solicitor's Office is also making inquiries into the matter. On the same day that Mr Stewart was dismissed, a new service agreement was signed between the Hunter Company and the Sydney-based SLSA Helicopters. In part, the service agreement states that the Hunter wishes to appoint and engage SLSA to act as manager for the helicopter service and in that capacity to provide services. Under the section titled Fees, the agreement goes on to say that for SLSA providing these services, Hunter shall pay a management fee of $12,300 a month to SLSA Helicopters. Allegations of the Hunter being controlled by Sydney have been the focus of the helicopter drama for the past 9 months. But Mr Marsh says the Hunter board is independent.
Absolutely independent. The buck stops with our board.
So why has the Hunter appointed SLSA as manager for the service at a cost of more than $12,000 a month?
To receive a service which is vital to this region. And quite frankly, Scott, I don't appreciate your attitude. Thank you very much.
No more comment?
No more comment, no. No more comment. I don't think any more comment is necessary. Thank you very much.
Keith Stewart turned up for work at the service's Broadmeadow base yesterday, only to be told by a representative of SLSA Helicopters that he was sacked. The reasons for the pilot's dismissal remain unclear, and the newly appointed chairman of the Hunter Service Board, Cliff Marsh, refuses to explain, even though the board endorsed the sacking.
That is a matter between employer and employee, and that's where the matter will stop.
But that's not where the issue has stopped. The ambulance union has spoken out in support of Mr Stewart, saying he's an excellent pilot.
It is becoming more apparent as I speak to the rank and file that they are of the opinion that the new board is in fact just a puppet of Sydney.
And apparently the outrage over the sacking does not end with the ambulance union. It's believed the service's volunteer crewmen want Mr Stewart reinstated by next weekend, otherwise they'll consider resigning. The Crown Solicitor's Office is also making inquiries into the matter. On the same day that Mr Stewart was dismissed, a new service agreement was signed between the Hunter Company and the Sydney-based SLSA helicopters. In part, the service agreement states that the Hunter wishes to appoint and engage SLSA to act as manager for the helicopter service and in that capacity to provide services. Under the section titled Fees, the agreement goes on to say that for SLSA providing these services, Hunter shall pay a management fee of $12,300 a month to SLSA helicopters. Allegations of the Hunter being controlled by Sydney have been the focus of the helicopter drama for the past 9 months. But Mr Marsh says the Hunter board is independent.
Absolutely independent. The buck stops with our board.
So why has the Hunter appointed SLSA as manager for the service at a cost of more than $12,000 a month?
To receive a service which is vital to this region, and quite frankly, Scott, I don't appreciate your attitude. Thank you very much.
No more Scott
comment?
Bevan,
No more comment.
NBN News.
No more comment. I don't think any more comment is necessary.
With the downturn in the economy, everyone has had to tighten their belts, even the time-honoured depression break at the Sport of Kings. And to counter this, Newcastle Jockey Club, for the first time, has imposed a levy for the use of the cinders and wood chip tracks at Broadmeadow.
They want 80 cents to work around the cinders and the wood chip track. We already pay a $4 surcharge on the grass, which the trainers here have accepted over the last couple of years. This extra increase of 80 cents a morning is just ridiculous.
If the vet puts his fees up $3.20 a week, or the produce merchant puts his up, do they go running to the AJC or the racing minister? I don't think so.
Around 1,900 horses are worked on a weekly basis at Broadmeadow, providing employment for a lot of people. But Peter Eggleston fears for the owners more than anyone.
It's going to drive the small owner that's kept Newcastle going over the last 50 years here. It's going to force them out of the game.
However, the NJC counters that the first-class facilities don't come cheap.
Times are tough, and the board here just feel that we can't continue to provide facilities for virtually a minimal return. You know, we spent something like $500,000 maintaining the tracks and wages, etc. here in 1991, and the return, I think, was something like $16,000. Now, it's hardly very good financial management.
The NJC has stated there won't be any lockout or confrontation come Monday morning between themselves and the trainers, but the trainers aren't too sure what will happen.
We don't know what's going to happen, whether the track might be closed. I don't know where we'll work our horses. Might have to take them to the beach or do something like that. But we've got a unanimous Newcastle decision by all the trainers here that we are not going to pay the 80 cents.
But late this afternoon, that united we stand feeling was beginning to crumble.
We've sold this morning tokens to about 6 trainers, so I don't know what the situation will be. We'll wait and see, but I certainly don't want to precipitate anything that might cause a confrontation. We'll be open for business on Monday, and I just hope common sense prevails.
It's been years of hard work, but Kim Curtis has made it. She's overcome her disabilities, the first profoundly deaf student to graduate from Newcastle University.
Kim Doris Curtis.
Kim studied teaching with little extra assistance. She attended normal lectures and tutorials. She lip reads, and with 20% hearing in one ear, she can hear some sounds through special equipment. Kim has now launched her career with a position at Tamworth TAFE.
50 years ago, morale was low as Australia tuned in grimly to news that its northern defences were falling one after another to the Japanese advance. Rabaul on the northern shore of Papua New Guinea had fallen and the Japanese battle fleet had Port Moresby in its sights. From there, Australia and the Indian Ocean were in easy reach. Australian and American ships went out to meet the invasion force head-on, but the battle was decided on air power. Both sides suffered heavy losses of ships, planes and men, but eventually the Japanese turned back. Victory didn't come cheaply. At Newcastle Cathedral today, tribute was paid to those who made the supreme sacrifice.
We're not here today to glorify that battle in the Coral Sea, but to give thanks to our Almighty and loving Father that we were spared invasion.
Accompanied by a detachment from the USS Fletcher, veterans and Australian Defence personnel marched to Civic Park for a wreath-laying service. Onlookers showed their gratitude and their pride in a flag that has also come under attack recently.
Once we lose the flag, we lose the identity of our nation.
One family alone added strength to the local show of support. Kelly, Kim and Christy Kesey are triplets and all cadets with the Naval Reserve. US Secretary of the Army Michael Stone spoke of a spirit of cooperation that has served Australia and the US from the Boxer Rebellion to Operation Desert Storm.
If we in the United States ever have to tramp again to Sunset Strand, I hope we can always do so with Aussie mates at our side.
Featuring 150 performers, it was the second Lake Macquarie Youth Spectacular. The show started with some classic rock and roll, followed by the Lake Macquarie Youth Choir. Fresh young talents showed their musical skills on piano, violin and clarinet, others with dance and concert band music. All proceeds of the show go to the Lake Macquarie City Council Youth Scholarship Fund.
Trainers met this morning amid rumours that they will boycott this weekend's Broadmeadow meeting if the NJC doesn't back down.
That sort of action wouldn't help the club, it wouldn't help the trainers, and it certainly wouldn't help the owners because you don't win prize money at home with horses in stalls.
Hopefully if we can work our horses between now and Saturday, the meeting here will definitely go ahead, and I can't see any reason why it wouldn't.
The Jockeys Association was also represented. After an hour the meeting broke up, trainers unanimously rejecting the 80-cent levy. The association instead coming up with this proposal.
The Newcastle Jockey Club maintain and run their own grass tracks, and us as association actually rent the other two tracks off them for a set fee that will be paid by our association.
The opposing parties are meeting now. NJC Secretary Manager John Curtis says there's every reason to be optimistic about the outcome.
Officers from the ICAC interviewed the Lord Mayor this morning. It's a follow-up to an interview they recorded on the 25th of last month into an insurance claim the Lord Mayor made on his earthquake-damaged home. John McNaughton says he is not under investigation.
No, it's not an inquiry. You could have fooled me. I thought it sure as hell was an inquiry, but it is not an inquiry. It is an assessment to see if an inquiry is necessary.
He says the matter was referred to the ICAC by a police task force investigating earthquake insurance, but the Lord Mayor says the referral was a formality due only to his high position in the community.
I am not a corrupt person. I have no worry about opening my mind, my heart, my office records to anybody.
It's understood ICAC officers will spend the week in Newcastle going through financial records. When asked what the nature of the inquiry was, a spokesman in Sydney said it's not the Commission's policy to comment on operational matters. Meanwhile, John McNaughton says he'll foot a legal bill of several $100s, but he says the cost to his reputation could be higher.
The taint is there, and there's no way of ever removing that.
Tom Hilston, NBN News. The destroyer slipped its moorings at first light. Only a handful of spectators were out to farewell the vessel as it prepared for departure. The turnout was in marked contrast to the hundreds of visitors who took advantage of inspection tours during the 5-day stopover. The 400 crew members would undoubtedly have made a healthy contribution to the city's economy, though perhaps not on the scale of the big spenders in Sydney. Nevertheless, some evidently made a few friends during their stay. The Spruance-class destroyer is less than 10 years old and numbers among the US Navy's foremost fighting ships. The Fletcher is now sailing north towards Townsville, where it will take part in more Battle of the Coral Sea celebrations from Saturday onwards. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Stop the engine. Set.
That latest contract also involves Comsteel's sister A&I company, Bradkin Consolidated, to supply $17 million worth of bogies for an additional 350 rail wagons to transport coal from the Hunter Valley to the port of Newcastle. Comsteel's half-yearly profit is up and business is bubbling for the company. It's pouring all gearbox castings for the Navy's new frigates and submarines, and for 12 months will supply all railway wheels to New Zealand, among a number of smaller contracts.
All parts of our plant have shared in upgrading capital, and we're very pleased that plant output is increasing, our sales are increasing, and that we've largely been unaffected by the recession.
Comsteel's exports are up 50% on this time last year, and its steel production has doubled in 10 years, all achieved with a reduction in the workforce from a couple of thousand to just 800 or so in that decade.
It won't actually put people on at Comsteel, but it will reinforce our strong employment position where we haven't retrenched or reduced labour for quite some time.
The potential spin-offs for the Hunter of the new coal wagons are enormous. They'll be able to carry 95 tonnes each, that's 20 tonnes more than the present model, and they'll be quieter and more aerodynamic, meaning greater reliability and more efficient operation. Combined with the new giant T1 locomotives, the government hopes to increase rail's coal carrying capacity 25% to 50 million tonnes within 2 years to keep pace with an anticipated upsurge in export demand.
This kilometre stretch of rail line from the Civic to Newcastle is dividing more than just the foreshore from the commercial area. It's drawing battle lines between those who want the link to stay and those pushing for it to be cut at the Civic as part of the honeysuckle redevelopment. Today, the critics of a Civic terminus rallied at the venue where they want the line to end, Newcastle Railway Station.
We've got a railway to bring them into Newcastle. We've got a railway to bring them in so that they can enjoy the beaches, enjoy the city, enjoy the heritage.
Although Newcastle City Council recently supported the rail cut as part of an inner-city strategy, most of the condemnation was directed at the state government.
This is only the beginning of the cutouts and cutbacks by the Greiner government.
But members of the Honeysuckle project say the protesters are fighting a losing battle. The decision has already been made, and it's here at the Civic that the line will end. The Honeysuckle Advisory Board's David Lamarchant says a Civic terminus is crucial to the vision of the foreshore redevelopment.
There will be a new bus rail interchange provided, better transport system for people, and a whole new area opened up for leisure and for people to come into town, shop and enjoy themselves.
But talk of a lost fight is dismissed by the campaigners.
Not at all. We'll keep fighting.
Over the years, the Manning Valley Beef Week has taken on a decidedly commercial approach for which organisers make no apologies. It includes the all-important hoof and hook competitions, where beasts are first judged on how they are fattened up for market and then after the meat's been processed. But all the while, the emphasis is on improving the quality of the product for export.
It's a selling exercise as a source of high-quality cattle. It's also an exercise in helping producers to produce a better article so that they get more money that way. So, yes, it is very much commercially oriented.
Emphasising the Asian connection, Japanese Consul General Yasandri Capucci looked over the Wingham abattoirs, which is 40% owned by Japanese interests. Mr Capucci inspected a $2 million upgrading of the boning room. 200 people are employed at the complex, which produces meat under the Anvik label. The best summer and autumn seasons on the Mid-North Coast for many years have boosted both participation and attendance at Beef Week.
We've got more people, we've got more cattle. The early competitions on last weekend, the cattle were much better conditioned, better presented, and many more of them than last year. And with the hoof and hook competition, the same things applied. There's magnificent cattle here today.
Results in the various categories of competition will be announced later. The whole event runs until Saturday.
In 2 days' time, the fate of Newcastle buses could be sealed. That's the deadline for Newcastle's government bus drivers to accept a work practice package designed to shave $5.7 million off costs. State Transit says that's how much has to be cut so that Newcastle buses can sign a 5-year contract with the Department of Transport to keep providing services. If the bus union continues to reject the package, then the government may give the contract to the private sector. The union has written to State Transit's General Manager of Operations, Guy Thurston, today, seeking confirmation of what happens if the package is rejected and Newcastle Buses is privatised. The letter states that at a meeting this week, Mr Thurston indicated that the Department of Transport would put Newcastle public bus services up for tender in the next couple of weeks. This afternoon, a spokesperson for State Transit refused to rule out the possibility that Newcastle buses would be privatised if an agreement isn't reached before Saturday. The union insists that State Transit's costings don't add up. Unhappy with State Transit's answers, the union has now written to the Department of Transport with 11 questions about the possible privatisation of the service. And one question asks if there's been any government intervention in the department's application of the Passenger Transport Act to Newcastle buses. But whatever decision is made on Saturday, the issue is set to escalate. There's a mass meeting of State Transit drivers in Sydney on Tuesday, where the members will be asked to consider moves for a stoppage of all government buses right around Australia. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
"36 bowlers from 16 Hunter Valley high schools were chasing the title of champion, and they turned on performances often reserved for more senior bowlers. In the semi-finals, the defending champion Danny Lucas of Rutherford High was an easy winner over fellow Rutherford student Paul Cousins 21-3 to advance to the final. His opponent in the final was to be Mark Van Zanden of Francis Greenway, who had a narrow 21-17 victory over Lee Simpson of Mount View High. The final was a classic with Lucas and Van Zanden drawing beautifully, as well as displaying controlled power when needed. In the thrilling match, the defending champ Lucas called on his experience to shade Van Zanden 25-21. Both boys have won a place in the New South Wales team to take on Queensland shortly. For Robbie McCormick and Paul Harrigan, last night at the Sydney Football Stadium was something special, a memory they'll never forget. However, in the Chiefs' case, 2 incidents early in the match somewhat clouded his recall.
I don't remember much of the first half, and courtesy of the Gilmester tackle, so I really don't remember too much of that tackle on Larson, but I had a bit of a look at it. It's unfortunate. I think he was going down and Glenn Lazarus tackling around the legs first, and it's very hard to judge a tackle when someone's going down so quick, but unfortunately that's the game and the way it is in State of Origin, and I think he's all right now, so it's good.
And the big fellow seemed to be in everything. Harrigan hit the ball up on numerous occasions and didn't let up on his fearsome tackling approach. And Chief even got cheeky in the second half, lucky not to get 10 in the bin.
Yeah, that was reflex, mate, nothing. Yeah, it's good. That was a little trick one and it came off well.
Modern day football is all about fresh reserves, and little Robbie McCormick played brilliantly when given the opportunity as Elias went to the blood bin.
You've got to have the fresh reserves, and they're a very big part of the game these days, so if I can get on there and help the team, well, that's a bonus.
Would have been a good feeling in the dressing room after.
Oh yeah, everyone was a buzz afterwards with the win, but like they say, that's 1 down and we've still got 2 to go, so if I can get in the next 2 and we get 2 more wins, that'll be even better.
Back to reality at the night's training session earlier this evening, the ecstasy of the Blues win for Harrigan was dampened a bit with the knowledge he may miss the clash with Canberra on Sunday.
I'm still a little bit sore with a few niggling injuries. I've got an infected elbow, and but apart from that, I'm going fine, and mate, I think I should be right, and again, I'll make the decision on Friday.
While Professor Spink lives in Canada, much of his research into parents and children in sport was done in Australia. He interviewed hundreds of children and their parents to determine how youngsters feel about having mum and dad involved in their sporting lives. He says most children want their parents to watch them play sport, but warns parents need to know how to behave.
I guess these parents think that if they give their child a little boost by driving them to do this and telling them to do that and maybe coaching them on the side, that the child will get better. Well, in fact, we know that in the long run that never works, and those kids quite often end up getting out of sport a lot sooner than they want to.
Professor Spink says sport teaches children self-discipline and is good for fitness, but he says most children say they become involved because it's fun. He says the message for parents is to be aware of their actions in a child's sporting life.
We look at champion athletes, all right, people that make it to the top, Olympians, professional athletes. We ask them about what happened when they were coming through sport. Every one of them says the parents were critical and they could not have made it on their own without their parents' support and encouragement. But they always say, and we have to be very clear on this, that the parents never pushed them. So there's a big difference between supporting and encouraging and pushing.
It's an issue which is stopping traffic in Toronto. According to the local Chamber of Commerce, these portable toilets are what the town might have to resort to if council doesn't provide proper amenities. The Chamber says it's been lobbying Lake Macquarie Council for 15 years to get public toilets in the middle of the main street. Now it's reached crisis level. The only 2 cubicles in the CBD are to go when the old library is sold by council. Shop owners are gathering signatures, demanding council do something about the situation.
It's a basic need to have some public toilets.
Late today, Mayor Doug Carley said council would provide public toilets for the area, possibly here behind Coles Supermarket. Former Federal Tourism Minister John Brown is the man responsible for launching Australia's tourism drive. When he took over the tourism portfolio in 1983, 800,000 people were visiting Australia. In 1988, when he left, that number had risen to 2.3 million. He helped put Australia and the Aussie identity on the map. His ties with tourism promotion are still strong. Among other things, he's the chairman of the Tourism Task Force, which is made up of some of the country's most powerful and influential people. Today he spoke to the Newcastle Chamber of Commerce and his message was clear. The Hunter region has lots of potential, but it's not being used.
If any other country owned just the Newcastle Hunter Valley area as a total tourism resource, they think they were very, very rich.
Mr Brown says the region is 10 years behind the rest of Australia in its attitude to tourism. But before anything can change, we need infrastructure.
In Newcastle you don't really have a modern 5-star or 4-star hotel. You've got the Apollo out here, which is fairly new and a very nice operation. And you've no doubt got some very adequate older hotels in Newcastle, but infrastructure's got to be renewable, it's got to be state of the art, and the quicker you do that, the better.
It started in the kitchen, the stove left on. In less than 10 minutes, flames had taken hold. The heat was intense, blistering wood, turning power points into toffee. Neighbours raised the alarm, but could do nothing to help.
Oh, I believe that he's been totally disorientated through the smoke and noxious fumes flowing through the place from the fire here, and he's been caught very quickly, unfortunately.
Firemen from 2 brigades battled through the smoke and fumes. They found the racehorse owner slumped in the bathroom. The rear of the house was destroyed. Scientific police and Shortland Electricity was sifting through the debris. The house was not fitted with a smoke detector.
When people are asleep, they've got no chance at all unless they hear an audible alarm.
And an 88-year-old woman has died in Gosford Hospital after accidentally setting herself on fire. Bessie Smith suffered burns to 80% of her body. Police say she was trying to fill a cigarette lighter with butane fuel when she caught alight. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
It was a tough physical first half, typical of clashes between the two sides over the years. Playing on home turf, Armidale took the initiative, leading 8-4 at the half-time break. Into the second half, and Armidale dominated, their constant attack wearing the Super Spuds down. Strong play from Armidale's backs, especially captain coach Steve Robinson, saw the Galloping Greens continually finding the gaps in Gyra's defence out wide. Even with a player sin-binned, Armidale maintained the pressure, adding 16 points through 2 tries and 4 goals. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. This year's Wool Expo had something for everyone, from fashion and knitting displays to exhibits of the latest machinery wares on offer. More than 40,000 people visited the 3-day expo, their geographical spread a reflection of the event's wide appeal.
It's been a tremendous response from people from the coast right through to central Queensland and down into sort of southern New South Wales and Victoria.
For the exhibitors, the expo also proved a success, with many reporting encouraging sales despite the tough economic times. Another popular event, the Yard Dog Trials. More than 100 entries were received for the various sections. This year's New England Yard Dog Championship was won by a Kelpie called Spider, owned by Ian Berry of Yarrawitch near Armidale. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.